Social media plays a huge part in our everyday lives, but it can also play a negative impact on our mental health. It's a growing concern, with a Pew Research Center report saying nearly half of teens saying social media has a mostly negative effect on people their age. So here with more on the impact is Mark Jones with Advanced Counseling Solutions. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, it's always great to see you.
Absolutely.
Let's start this conversation talking about teens or adults. You know, we have our phones in our hand all the time. So what does the impact of social media have on our everyday lives? What does that look like now?
Well, you know, with the advancements in technology and the involvement in everyday aspects, especially with our teens in school and even in home, it's so easy to get lost in social media, right? So there's a lot of positives with social media. There's a lot of connection, a lot of uplift. It keeps a lot of people involved in a lot of different aspects. But the negative influences with teens, particularly that have less frontal lobe development, it creates more increased anxiety, depression, and isolation effects.
And there's a point where that connection opportunity that social media offers can really take a turn and have a negative impact. Is this part of like a shifting focus with phones and social media being more at the center of their socializing aspect and becoming more of a priority than what else is going on in their everyday lives?
Well, absolutely. You know, if you think of just the concept of social media, is really geared to be addictive, just with like notifications and how it affects dopamine release, and then with, again, young kids that have underdeveloped frontal lobes just because of where they're at in development stages, it cues increased anxiety, depression, isolation. It has teens especially get into these unhealthy cycles of comparison, body image issues, self-esteem issues, because when you get on these social platforms, you instantly comparing to multiple people. Where do you stand in and where do you fit in? And then what happens with our teens is they're substituting social media platforms for interperson interactions, which eliminates a lot of your communication skills.
I see. And some of that can be just from viewing social media.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about interaction too. You know, how does social media's influence have an effect on the bullying and suicide rate, especially among even young children and teens who are using social media?
Well, cyberbullying is huge, and it's been increasing, and I just see it continually increasing just with the use of social media as a whole. As parents and mentors and educators, we have to be very mindful of the content that's being shared on social media, and with our youth using the social media platforms, we want to be mindful of the things that they are viewing constantly, things that they may be trying to compare themselves to, things that they see as inspirational as well. I think triggers a lot of the negative effects, especially with cyberbullying.
And let's talk about what parents can do now. You know, putting it in perspective, really, from how some of us grew up, it's a different ball game than it is maybe 20 years ago. So talk to me about that, and what can parents do to help reduce this being an issue in their kids' or teens' lives? You know,
I try to, in my own life as a parent and with people that I work with, I try to get people to understand, like, you don't want to fight kids over social media because it is a part of their life. But you want to grow and learn with them as with like a relationship, and have healthy boundaries and teach kids about boundaries and standards when on social media platforms, because that's with anything. As a parent, you want to educate them on how to use this thing that could potentially be beneficial to them or negatively impact them. So I say, like, limit screen time, try to prioritize things away from screen time. You want to make sure kids are not using screen time before bed, because it affects sleeping patterns just from blue lighting. Just a lot of those little small cues can go a long way.
Of course, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's a difficult conversation to have with kids or younger people. You know, these days especially, you can definitely seek out therapy if it does become an issue in your life.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about this.
Thank you for having me.